There's this version of you that exists only in other people's heads. And somehow, that fake version of you has been running your real life. I used to think caring about what people thought was just humility, like it meant I was self aware. It meant I took other people seriously. I told myself it was actually a good trait, but then I caught myself doing something that I still think about. I was at a coffee shop, just writing, alone, minding my business, and a group of people walked in. Strangers, people I will never see again. And I immediately closed my laptop. Not because I was embarrassed by what I was writing, but because I didn't want them to see me writing. Like somehow, a stranger watching me work on something I cared about felt dangerous. That moment stuck with me because I realized it wasn't about them at all. They weren't even looking at me. I just assumed they were. And they let that assumption, that completely fictional judgment, change what I was doing in real time. That's when I started thinking, how much of my life has been quietly shaped by people who weren't even paying attention? Here's the thing nobody really talks about. Most of the people you're afraid of judging you are too busy worrying about being judged themselves. It's like being in a room full of people all convinced they're the only one being watched. Everyone performing for an audience that doesn't exist. I had this phase where I stopped posting things I actually liked online because I thought they were too niche, too specific. I'd write something, feel genuinely good about it, and then delete it before posting because I imagined some faceless group of people cringing at it. And I listened to those imaginary people over the real feeling I had in the moment. Think about that. I chose the opinion of a fictional crowd over my own actual experience. It's like skipping a meal you genuinely want because you think someone might comment on your order. The food is right there. You're hungry, but the ghost of a stranger's opinion has more power than your own appetite. The audience in your head is almost always louder than any audience in real life. And unlike a real audience, it never claps. At some point, caring too much stops being a feeling and starts being a lifestyle. And it's exhausting in a way that's hard to explain because it's not like you're doing anything obvious. You're just managing, constantly. Managing how you laugh in a group. Managing what you say at work so nobody thinks you're too eager or not eager enough. Managing your Instagram so it doesn't look like you're trying. Managing the texts you send so you don't come off as too available. I remember having a conversation with someone I barely knew and spending the entire time thinking about how I was coming across instead of actually listening to them. I nodded at the right moments. I laughed when it seemed appropriate, but I wasn't there. I was backstage adjusting my costume while the actual moment of connection just passed. That's the real cost. Not embarrassment, not social failure, just absence. You keep missing the actual experience because you're too busy curating it. It's like buying the most expensive gym shoes, wearing them to the gym, and spending the whole workout checking if people notice the shoes. You showed up, you technically did the thing, but you didn't get anything from it. Here's where it gets uncomfortable, and I say this from personal experience, not from some psychology textbook. Caring too much about what people think isn't really about them. It's about a gap between who you are and who you think you're supposed to be. And the bigger that gap feels, the more you need external validation to cover it. When I was in a phase of life where I genuinely didn't know what I was doing, like actually lost, I cared about people's opinions the most. Every like felt like proof I was okay. Every awkward silence in a room felt like evidence that I wasn't. I was using other people's reactions as a mirror because I didn't trust my own. There was this period where I made a pretty impulsive financial decision, bought something I didn't need, partly because I thought it would make me look a certain way to a certain group of people. Not to impress them exactly, just to feel like I fit the version of myself I was trying to project. And the second I bought it, I felt nothing. Because the gap was still there. You can't buy your way out of an identity crisis. When you're solid in yourself, other people's opinions become interesting instead of threatening. You can hear feedback and choose whether it's useful. But when you're not, everything lands like a verdict. This is the part that took me the longest to see. Caring too much doesn't just make you anxious, it makes your life smaller. Because every time you decide not to do something because of what someone might think, you're handing over a small piece of your life. And you don't notice each individual piece leaving. You just wake up one day and realize you've been living in a smaller room than you needed to. I almost didn't start something I actually cared about because I spent months asking myself, but what will people think if it doesn't work out? Not will it work, not do I want this, but what will the witnesses to my failure think? And I let that question eat half a year. Meanwhile, the people I was afraid of, living their lives, not tracking my moves, not waiting to see if I'd succeed. They had their own fears, their own self-consciousness, their own imaginary audiences watching them. That's the irony. The people whose judgment you're hiding from are hiding from someone else's judgment too. Nobody is freestanding. Everybody's managing something. So the idea that there's this panel of confident, unbothered people watching and evaluating your life is just not real. The cage feels solid, but the door was always open. What actually shifted something for me wasn't the motivational quote or a book or a big moment. It was honestly just fatigue. I got tired. Tired of editing myself before I'd even spoken. Tired of the mental load of maintaining some image that I wasn't even sure I wanted in the first place. Tired of working so hard for an audience I'd invented. And one day, I just didn't. I posted the thing I'd been second-guessing, sent the message I'd been rewording for a week, said the opinion in the room that I'd been quietly holding, and nothing happened. The world didn't shift. Nobody cared in the way I imagined they would. But something in me did shift, because I realized how much energy I'd been spending on a problem that was mostly in my head. I'm not saying I stopped caring completely. I don't think that's even healthy. But there's a difference between caring because you have values and caring because you're scared. One makes you a better person. The other just makes you smaller. That distinction changed things for me. Quietly, but it did. You've been carrying a version of yourself that you built for other people. And that thing is heavy, not because it's who you are, but because it's not. The goal isn't to stop caring entirely. The goal is to care on purpose, to choose what matters to you instead of defaulting to what you think everyone else matters to. Because at the end of everything, the opinions you borrowed won't be there. Only the choices you actually made will be. Stop auditioning for a role nobody asked you to play. What's one thing you've been holding back because of what someone might think? Drop it in the comments. Honestly curious.